Hello, and welcome to FinTech Impact, and welcome to episode 425. Yes, it's been that long. I like to bring bigger guests on for some milestones, and for this one, I brought on Craig Iskowitz, CEO of Ezra Group. Craig is a well-known technology consultant in the advisory world, and I brought him on to talk about trends and things that are going on in the industry that would interest you. And as always, here's my interview with Craig. Craig, thanks for taking the time and putting up with my bungled attempts at an intro.
It's fun seeing someone else do it. It's because I'm usually the one doing that.
Yes, the editing behind the scenes is always amusing. Craig Iskowitz of the Ezra Group, tell us about the Ezra Group.
Wealth management firms are drowning in tech options, but starving for objective guidance. And that's why I started Ezra Group. So we help RIAs, broker dealers, and wealth management firms cut through the noise. We evaluate tech stacks, vet vendors, build go-to-market strategies. And we don't sell software. We don't take referral fees. Just tell you the truth about what's going to work for your firm. And we make tech stacks work better.
Fantastic and well said. And insert joke about the ever expanding size of the Kitsis map right here. All right.
Michael and
So
I meet on that every month. We've been doing that for 7 years.
that's right. You're part of the curation of that.
Yep. Every
Well,
month,
thank
Michael and I get together and we battle it out.
excellent. All right. Let's tell us about your history. How'd you get into this?
It's a long and sordid tale that your audience probably doesn't want to hear, but long story short, I have a degree in computer science and I got a job with a tech company that was building out broker dealer systems way so long ago. You don't even want to say, but that was where I got my start on Wall Street, deploying software on systems at Merrill Lynch, Goldman Sachs, Prudential, firms that don't exist anymore, like Solomon Brothers, Shearson Lehman. Remember who they were? So did a lot of work on Wall Street. Then this is so long ago, we didn't even have networks, right? Our clients didn't have networks to deploy. So we were referring consultants to them to build out network, put in a router. Didn't know what a router was.
Mm.
That's how long ago this was. And then I saw what the consultants were charging. And I said, man, I got to get into that business. They're making a lot more money than we were making deploying the systems. So I did 10 years there and then left to join a consulting firm. And then we were building out broker dealer software and trading floor moves and basically anything that firms wanted us to do. And did that for 3 or 4 years. I was in Midtown Manhattan and then went off on my own and started Ezra Group in 2005 just to focus on wealth management, which seemed like a niche. And we've been doing it for 21 years.
Fantastic. All right. So needless to say, you've been around for a while. You've seen it, done it. Basically, you've
long.
been there. Yeah, too long. Fair enough. All right. Given your prominence, I brought you on the podcast specifically to talk about bigger trends and whatnot that are happening in the industry. What is it you see that's happening these days? Of course, AI is going to come in this conversation, but talk to me about the challenges, the opportunities, the interesting things just happening and shaking out.
It's hard to even say. The things are changing so fast. I was quoted a couple of years ago, which wasn't even my quote, but it was the rate of change has never been as fast as it is today, but will never be as slow as it is today. It's not only faster, it's the rate of acceleration is increasing. And that seemed logical 5 years ago. Now it's out of control. It reminds me of the early web, the early internet in the 90s. Every couple of months, we'd see a new spec with new feature functionality. We were excited. Every couple of months, new features. We can put an image on a website. We can put an audio file. That's fantastic. Now it's every couple of hours. We're seeing every day there's a new release. When one vendor has it, the next day, then another vendor has it. Right. So the rate of change is exponentially increasing.
Absolutely, especially as artificial intelligence is used to create more artificial intelligence and then some, right? I don't know about you, but I got to update Claude 3 times a day because of the midday updates. And it's just like, how is this a thing now? But it is. Yeah. All right. So basically the pace of change, you're absolutely right. I think people are feeling inundated and overwhelmed by it. And I think I actually been saying the rate of change of technology long ago far exceeded our ability to take it all in a reasonable amount of time and implement it properly. And I think it's only just gotten worse in the last several years. Yeah.
Much worse. Yeah. What we're seeing now is we've seen different trends. A couple of years ago, it was crypto, right? And every vendor was announcing their crypto version and slapping IO on their name and others, right? And that lasted a couple of years and then disappeared. And now we're seeing the same with AI. I think AI is going to have a much bigger impact on wealth management than crypto did, but we're still seeing every tech vendor adding AI powered on their website, but almost none of them can explain what it's actually doing, what the benefits are, and how implement this is better than just implementing Claude itself.
Yeah.
So that's something we're trying to help our clients work their way through.
So we'll come back to that in a sec. I just got to say that after having been to some of the conferences you've been into and recently, every time someone started by saying, we're an AI native, I'm like, stop.
Mhm.
I don't care. Tell me what you actually do. It's the tagline to get attention right now. And it doesn't really mean anything unless you actually show me a good implementation of a job to be done that's superior to what is being done with general AI or with the existing systems. So I think let's go back. When you talk to your clients, again, they're feeling overwhelmed. What's your advice? Like, where do they start? How do they keep their heads level in this ever changing world? And where should they prioritize their vision?
So the a lot of my clients call me Dr. No because they're always wanting to get something new. And my answer is no, you don't need that. Whatever it is, let's fix what you got first. And that's often the case with most AI, except the easiest things to implement, like a chatbot or like a note taker. Those are easy. They don't require a lot of change and they provide instant benefits. But a lot of the other things, deploying agents and things that actually do work and make changes to critical systems, that requires a lot more thought and getting the rest of your tech stack in order. We're talking to a prospect today, and they called us specifically about AI. They want us to help them. They feel like they're falling behind. And I said, tell me about your tech stack. They said, our tech stack's fine. We just want to talk about AI. I said, I really can't tell you what AI is going to help you if I don't know what your tech stack is. If I don't know what you've got, what's working, what isn't working, how long it's been there, I can't tell you where you can fit AI in order for it to even work for you. Right. So it's not, AI isn't some magic powder you just sprinkle onto your tech stack to make it better. It's just another tool, and you have to know how to implement it and why and when to do it.
Yeah, if anyone heard me sigh there, it's because I couldn't agree more. It just seems to be this magic panacea that everybody thinks is just a pill you take to solve all your problems. And when in actuality, it's like, what is the actual problem you're trying to fix? What is the job to be done? Maybe AI's got a role, maybe it doesn't. Just depends. So, yes, I'm sure you've lived enough of these, including the crypto hype. If we need to look at crypto, okay, why? I just, so I guess, really, I guess your first step is, as you said, is basically to step back and ask yourself why you're even looking at this.
Yeah, they're looking at it because everyone else is looking at it,
Yeah.
right? Because they can't get away from the news. But they don't know what they want and they don't know what it can do. Sometimes they can figure it out. And then there are use cases out there, and we're trying to help them with use cases. But in some areas, they really don't know what it can do or how it can help them. They just want something, right?
Mhm.
Obviously, either their boards or their senior executives are asking them what their strategy is, and they don't know. So that's what we're trying to help them with, and understanding here's what it can do, here's what it can't do. And you don't always want to be on the cutting edge. We're a regulated industry. We can't build stuff that's half-assed or kind of
Mhm.
works, right? It's not a game. It's not a social media website where if something goes out that's not true, it's okay, right? So we can't afford hallucinations when you're sending out a client meeting note. You can't afford hallucinations when you're sending out a performance report. You can't afford to have the data wrong, right? It's like back when we had the big move was going to agile programming. And so you can't do a portfolio accounting engine using agile. It doesn't work that way. You have to have very clear specifications written and done in waterfall because that's the way it works. You can't be off by a penny or a fraction of a penny. So there's a lot that they need to learn and a lot that they could do, but then a lot that they really shouldn't be doing.
Yeah. So I think at the end of it, we're really summing up is that the goal should be first to start with education for them to understand
Hmm.
the actual core problem they're trying to solve. What it actually, I also would say the other aspect of this is the understanding with the art of the possible, right? What is even possible with what they're asking about versus just, again, the hopium we see of so many new technologies that come out in the market.
Yeah, and I got so on the same client call today, they said, well, we can build stuff ourselves. Should we just build it ourselves? And I said,
Okay.
yeah, you can. But there was one of my favorite friends in the industry, Kristen Schmidt. One of her many famous sayings is, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
So I'm glad you brought that up, and I just want to gauge you on this because one of the things I'm seeing, one of the trends I'm seeing, is I feel that the entire buy versus build debate has the pendulum swung away from buy now towards build, with everybody falling in love with vibe coding, which I love it, but I also understand its limitations and there's certain mission critical things I would never touch with it. But is that what you're seeing in the marketplace? Are you finding that a lot of large enterprises are thinking, "Oh, great, we can just in-house a lot of this"?
Yes, we're seeing more of that. What they don't realize is I wrote an article for Investors Business Daily 5 years ago, at least, about advisors building their own software. And even 5 years ago, it was getting very cheap to build software.
Mhm.
And I told them, the cost of software, the building part is maybe 10% of the cost, the long-term cost. It's the support and maintenance and updates and bug integrations. Because once you build software, you now have to maintain it forever, right? And that's where the cost comes in. The building the software is easy, even back then. Now it's free. So, but so just because you can build software doesn't mean you want to be in the software business. Every CTO wants to be in the software business. They want to build stuff because they want to build their little empire. That's not what your company is in business for. No client is hiring you as an advisor because you got a great rebalancer or because you have a meeting note taker that does all this crazy stuff, right? They hire you because they trust you, because they like you, because you relate to them, because they feel that you can help them with with their financial lives. Maybe you have, if they're young enough or if they're tech savvy enough, they want a mobile app or they like your website. But that's a very small percentage of why clients hire you. So you have to watch out for your tech staff wanting to build little empires and wanting to get into the software business just because they can. That's not what your job is, and that's not where your value is.
Yeah, I mean, I've made the comment of, name a world-class software ever spun out from a major financial institution. Good luck to you. And the other point to this is, as you said, it's all the upkeep piece. You're right. It's creation is easy. The upkeep and bug working and everything else and evolution is hard. And no financial institution basically wants to stand up multiple technology companies around multiple different technologies internally. It just doesn't make sense when you start looking at the economics of it, and also the fact that you're never going to be a best in class tool.
And that's the other thing they don't realize is that vendors provide some value in that they're aggregating best practices from across the industry. When you have a vendor, they have hundreds of other clients just like you. And those hundreds of clients are crowdsourcing all the best stuff into that platform that's codified in the software. You don't have that if you build it yourself. You can call your friends, but you're not going to get the same level of capability and constant geometric improvement that a vendor is going to be able to deliver to you. So there's another, and how do you put a cost on that? How do you put a value? That's a tremendous ROI you are not getting for the free software you just built.
Yep. And again, I feel like because they can, this conversation is happening so readily now. I feel like we're a good 24 months out before a bunch of people start regretting these decisions and swinging back the other way.
It's always
And,
that
and I,
case. We always see that the pendulum always swings. Like we're big in the insurance space and we're working with an
Mm,
insurance carrier. Their IT staff since 2020, their IT staff quadrupled. Their revenue didn't quadruple. Their profit didn't quadruple. They got a CTO who was able to get the board to keep giving him more and more money, right? But it's not. But how much of that is actually adding value? How much of that is actually delivering real ROI versus just buying the software from somebody?
correct. And I would think also the other part of this is, I mean, look, on some level, I get it. The entire development cost paradigm shifted, I won't say overnight, but very quickly. Right. So on some level, you have to stop and ask yourself, is this a worthy pursuit? Right now, of course, they're going to overextend.
Mhm.
And of course, these dev teams, as you said, these are people who basically want to build things. So as opposed to maintain and integrate. So they're inclined to do that. And I think that they're looking at the cost savings kind of through the wrong lens. The cost savings through the lens is they're thinking that they can pay less to their vendors by doing it themselves. When
Mhm.
in actuality, over time, the cost savings on development is going to filter down by way of more affordable vendors and basically some cost savings passing on through the existing vendors in future negotiations as opposed to now.
Mhm. In most cases, you can't build it cheaper than the vendor can. Right. You're building it for one. They're building it
Yep.
for 1,000 or
Yep.
however many hundreds of clients they have, right? Their job is software development. That's all they do. They spend a lot of time and effort making their processes more efficient. You can't possibly do that. Right. So, and even if the software is free, even if you're using free tools, you're still hiring people who are doing the work. Every hour of their time, as a full-time employee, costs money, right? And it's a tremendous amount of money, especially in the U.S. Unless you're in some very random remote area, right? Your IT staff is not cheap, and the money you're spending on them is not all is most of the time not providing the value you think. I mean, there's some things you can build. Every wealth management firms has some special sauce, whatever it might be. Is it alternatives? Is it in financial planning? Is it investment management? Is it, something about high net worth, something about them could help. I know some wealth management firms that only cater to retired airline pilots
Mhm.
or bass fishermen. And so maybe something they could build specifically just for them. It doesn't require hundreds of people to build all that. There's plenty of software. You look at the Kitsis as a group map, we have almost 600 applications, and it's growing by 10 plus every month. Right? Someone's on there is doing what you want, almost guaranteed. Check out what they've got there before you try to build something yourself.
Yeah. So let's flip the script there. Let's talk about when it makes sense to actually contemplate building something yourself. Is there a certain set of criteria that you think have to be achieved in order to basically kind of say, yes, let's do this? Or in your mind, when do you turn to someone and say, yeah, this is probably the smart thing to do?
Well, for example, we build a lot of dashboards for clients.
Mhm.
So custom dashboards are a great use case because they're cheap and you can agile them. If the dashboard isn't right today, it's not a big deal. It's not going to crash your business, right? You just tweak it and you can debug it, the dashboard without causing a problem because it's only internal. So and also every firm has different infrastructure, and there isn't a lot of vendors out there that are doing exactly what you want when it comes to dashboarding or moving data between different systems. So that's why they call us a lot for that, because they may have Orion and Money Guide and QuickBooks and Nitrogen, or they may have a completely different set. So we can tweak the dashboard to work with just the applications that they're using and make it work exactly the way they want. Like that's what we do internally. We built our own dashboard for Ezra Group because we use Slack like everyone does, Asana, HubSpot, and Outlook Mail. And we also use QuickBooks. So pulling data from all those systems and being able to update them remotely is even more helpful. For example, we may have 5 or 6 deals that are all coming due on the same day. Rather than going to HubSpot and manually updating each one, I can just tell Claude, these 4 deals that are due today, just push them out a week. And it'll
Yeah.
do it. Right.
Yeah. I mean, at the time of this recording, it's just a couple of weeks after I presented a future proof of the concept of vibe coding. And, I think I echo much of what you said, but a little more structured. It was effectively, look, first off, like, is there a affordable solution that exists? Then don't do it. Is this even feasible? Is another one altogether. I think you already kind of stumbled into this by saying things like, we're not going to do things that touch the portfolio necessarily or people's money. That is where we can't afford to screw up. But a dashboard being slightly off, we can correct for that internally. If you want to build a specialized calculator on renting versus buying that doesn't exist somewhere else, knock yourself out. Right. But when it comes to, I think there's a real big differentiation between mission critical and basically things you can play with and FAOFO for lack of a better term. And then this other part of it is I see this online all the time. These people basically thinking they're going to vibe code everything. And it's like, oh, I'm going to get rid of this $8 per month software. And I'm sitting there going like, $8.
Or even 80, whatever the number is, most likely your costs are going to be higher in the long run,
Yeah.
and you're not going to get as much value out of it. And also, another thing that we're seeing is everyone is adding every feature to every application, where everyone's going to be a super app soon, right? Everyone's adding tax management, tax planning, everyone's
Yep.
adding, statement processing or statement imports. Everyone's adding note taking, everyone's adding onboarding and account opening because it's so easy once you have all the data from the note taker.
Yep.
People building workflow. So whatever application you have, just wait a couple weeks. They'll probably build whatever you're looking for. All right. So that's going to be benefiting advisors and disintermediating vendors, because Orion now has everything, right? So it's a full end-to-end platform. They've got financial planning. They added estate planning. They bought a CRM, right? So what's to stop them from they've got their own AI tools, their own reporting, their own business intelligence, right? So each one of these firms is looking to do everything for an advisor, and they will be able to do it soon. Another question I get asked is best of breed versus all in one, which is better? The answer is all things being equal, all in one is better.
Yep. But there's trade-offs.
However,
Yeah.
all things are rarely equal.
Yeah. I mean, look, you want to have everything kind of work within one environment and reduce a bunch of frictions and have less of a pain in the butt. All in one is your answer. Are you going to get the best in class experience and everything you exactly want from an all in one? There is no one ring, is what they say. Like there is no one ring to rule them all. It's going to make everybody happy and powerful.
Right. But you have to realize that there's tremendous costs to that friction. There's
Correct.
tremendous cost to integrating applications. There's tremendous cost to moving data and retraining and task switching. And you have to think about that. And no one ever does. They go, this is cool. Let's get this in here because it'll help us in this area. And then they do that 3 or 4 more times. And now the advisors are bouncing back and forth between different systems. Things aren't working right. And now they're building spreadsheets and other manual workarounds to get things done.
Well, that brings us to an interesting topic, which is one of the things that you actually chart on your website, which is the state of integrations in the industry.
Thank you
Care
for
to
bringing it
speak?
up, Jason.
My pleasure. Great segue. We didn't even plan for this. So
We didn't plan for anything. You didn't give me
No, we
any
didn't.
questions.
I love shooting from the hip. Anyway, so talk to me about the state of integrations in our industry and what you think of them.
They're getting better, but they're still lacking severely. If you look at our scoring, we've scored over 600 applications. And we did this because being consultants for 20 plus years, integrations were really a thorn in our side and our clients' sides. No one knew what integrations worked and didn't work. Vendors were very opaque about what they had. If you were lucky, you had a couple logos on the website, but you didn't know what was underneath that or what it meant. And you often didn't find out what the integrations did until you signed the contract and the software was installed. And by then it's too late. So we set out 2022, this has been 4 years already, to launch our own research where we evaluated every application and how well they integrate with every other application in the wealth tech space. And you can check that on our website, ezragroup.com, at any time and see what the score is for any application in any category. And it's gotten better over time. Like the median score is like a 4.5 out of 10. And we consider a 6 to be really good or excellent. Below that, it's not as good. But also I think AI is helping as well, that you can build integrations quicker with AI, but that doesn't mean they're doing it. Right? So we're seeing some improvement, but there's still at least 100 applications on the Kitsus Ezra Group map that have 0 integrations, or at least 0 integrations publicly listed.
Yeah. And I mean, that may change. They may not change. Again, you talked about AI helping with that. Concept of MCPs does help to a degree. It may not be as reliable as we hope, depending on the situation.
Mhm.
But overall, it's, everything. I mean, let's be frank. These things don't integrate perfectly because they were never designed to from day one. They were designed to solve their own problem or to provide their own value proposition. And then you're turning around and trying to make them talk another language to another entity in a separate foreign land. So it's not surprising this happens.
I'm not surprised by anything anymore.
Good to know. So basically, besides the AI, well, actually, I think let's actually go back to AI. We'll talk about it differently. Are you seeing much in the way of organizational change in terms of how they're organizing themselves or thinking about it in the world of AI?
I don't understand your question.
So-
Organizational change of vendors or organizational
Oh, I
change
mean,
for
vendors for
management teams?
sure. And actually, let's start there. Vendors, how are you seeing them change themselves in the wake of this new innovation?
Well, back to what I said, they're building every feature,
Mm.
whether it's necessarily connected or not, because they can. Right? So we're seeing more all-in-one applications launching. Startups with a couple guys in their basement building all-in-ones. They start with a note taker, and then they start adding risk tolerance, financial planning, portfolio management, billing, compliance. Right. So in the beginning, no one's going to use that. No one's going to put their whole advisory firm on 2 guys in their basement. But at some point, they're going to get good enough that someone will take a chance. And you'll have the lifestyle guys, the $10 million advisor in Des Moines, Iowa goes, you know what, this is only $100 a month and it replaces $500 worth of software per month. That's value. And it does seem to do what I need. I only need very minimal feature functionality. Just do my ETFs, rebalance them, get me a performance report, make sure it's compliant, and I'm done. So they'll start working. And then you're going to start seeing things change because you're either going to become an everything application, or if you last long enough as a standalone, or you're going to slowly see your user base disappear.
So that raises the question when it comes to all-in-ones, because I came to similar conclusions, said like this was going to lead to a supernova of the all-in-one category in the Kitsus map in particular. And the question becomes, I think, how viable is it for some of these businesses? Like realistically, I've seen a couple of these where people have effectively created their own all-in-one based on the way they see the universe and how they want their practices to work. If you're a betting man here, how many of these businesses do you think are going to be like sizable and viable in the next 5 years?
Oh, not many. I mean, there already is a viability problem. We just don't know it because if you look at the Ezra Group Kitsus map of the 600 vendors, there's a lot that aren't viable now. They haven't really been growing they manage to get 100 or 200 clients, small RIAs on their platform, and they're making some money, but not enough. And either they're maxing out their credit cards, or they could be an advisor who is doing it on the side, or they have PE funding, but they're running out of room and trying to figure out how they can exit, right? So a lot of them are out there. No one's going to tell you this. All the press releases are wonderful. Everything's fantastic. But when you look under the hood, they haven't added any new clients recently. And that's a lot of these firms because there's just too many, right? If you look at how many financial planning, specialized financial planning applications there are,
Mhm.
right? It's probably over almost 100. They can't all be growing exponentially. They can't all be adding, 100, 200, 300 advisors a year. It's impossible. Right. So what are they doing? They're just hanging out. They've got a small base, and eventually they're just going to disappear. We saw, and it could happen fast. Like, look how fast some of the note takers, like the transcription tools, disappeared, right? Mobile Assistant went from, 1,000 clients to out of business in less than 2 years.
Well, he cashed out in the end, but yes. I
Right.
mean, that was an underlying seed change to the value proposition.
Right.
He was early to notation, but not to AI.
Right. And there's a lot of it. There's another, 15 note takers out there. They can't all survive.
Yeah, they can't all survive. And I mean, we're seeing that most of them don't even equal a single percentage point on the basically user maps right now, right? The market share. So
Right. And it's hard to gather that information. That some of the surveys out there aren't really scientific.
no, they're not.
There's
They don't
really
have enough
statistical
scale. But I
analysis.
mean, there's indicators, right?
Yes.
We can't say with certainty if someone's below that threshold, but we can say that they're definitely will be smaller than the top players in the space.
Yes. Plus, I mean, my recommendation is that every vendor should build a note taker.
You think that should be in-house entirely?
Everyone should do it. Why? Because the note takers are going to disintermediate you, right? The note takers are already building. They're already halfway to a CRM.
Mhm.
They don't want to say that because they don't want to be compared to CRMs. They don't want to get into a feature war of listing down the features of a CRM, but they want to be the note taker or AI agentic operating system that does enough that maybe you don't need your CRM anymore. You didn't buy it for that, but once you're in the door, they go, look at all the stuff we're doing for you. They're tracking. Their CRMs do not create data; they just gather it, right? So if the note taker is the gatekeeper of all the incoming data from all your clients from every channel, and we're just pushing it to the CRM as a backup, that's a really expensive backup that we don't really need anymore. The note takers are tracking tasks, they're doing workflows, they're opening accounts, they're sucking in client statements, they're doing current versus proposed, they're doing meeting prep, meeting running, post-meeting support. What else is there? That's most of the advisor's day, right? That's most of the interactions they have with their clients. And they're just living in this, they're living in the note takers. So what's the CRM doing it, right? Only in very, very specific circumstances is it providing any value at all. So it's the larger firms like the Salesforces will be the last to go, but the smaller ones are going to have a problem. That's why Wealthbox launched a note taker, why
Yeah.
Practify launched a note taker, why Redtail partnered with G-Reminders, right? So they know they need something because if there's something that's on top of them, they're just a data store. They're headless.
Yeah. I mean, there's something more powerful than literally being in the room and collecting the information. That's effectively what they are.
Mhm.
Now, to clarify two things. First off, someone the size of Salesforce has enough market share and size to adapt over time. The question is, will they be able to? And we'll see how that flows. But one thing I want to clarify too, like, so when you said everybody should build a note taker, I thought to myself, okay, where are you going with this? Specifically vendors you're talking about in particular, and specifically those that own like system of record type data. Is this effectively where you're going, right?
I would think any vendor.
Hmm.
But yeah, system of record, portfolio management vendors, financial planning vendors, definitely CRMs.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely. So that's the case. Then let's put this out the other way. What do you think of these large institutions, these large financial institutions that are building their own note takers? So back to the build versus buy debate.
Well, you're talking about like a Morgan Stanley level. They can do anything they want.
Yeah.
They've got the cash, they've got the capital, they've got the staff, and they've been doing their own tech for decades.
Mhm.
And that's not what I'm talking about. Merrill Lynch does their
Yeah.
own, right?
Yeah.
When we deployed software at Merrill Lynch, their first question was, how can we rebuild this? Right? Like when I helped the vendor, I won't say who, but the vendor deploy portfolio accounting managed account platform to Merrill Lynch in 2010, right? They had it. And by 2015, they were asking, how can you take the portfolio accounting out? We only want the rebalancing part. We built our own portfolio accounting, right? So they can do that. They're that size and scale. We're not talking about the wirehouses here.
Mhm.
It's everyone else that really should not be looking over. They don't want to get over their skis.
Yeah. But even then, I mean, it's still, where's the line on build versus buy, right? They want to do the notation transcription and then basically be able to push that to other systems. The question is, at what point do they stop going down the rabbit hole of where that data can go?
Yeah. You have to look at where the value is coming, and is note taking really where your value is? And just because it's easy, again, back to just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because it's easy doesn't mean you should do it anyway either, right? It's another
Exactly.
thing for you to manage, right? Why are you doing this? I think the larger wealth management firms, broker dealers and enterprise RIAs, nationwide firms, are not looking hard enough at their tech spend.
Basically, in light of all this, you're basically going back to should they be going back to the table stakes and say, should we be doing any of this? And what should we not be doing?
Every year they should be looking at it. Like, imagine you're going to be acquired.
Mhm.
If someone's going to acquire you, what are they going to do? They're going to rip everything out. Or they're going to look and see line by line, what are you doing? Do we need this? Or imagine new CEOs coming in or new CTOs coming in. What are they going to do? They're going to line by line look through what do you got and why are we doing this? That's the first thing you ask. Why are we doing all this stuff? Whatever it might be. And most of the time they don't know. We've always done it that way. Well, the last guy did it this way. We don't know. So I think that's a valuable exercise for firms to run through.
So that's with large firms. Basically, so I think in general, that's the argument for large firms is what you just gave there. When it comes to the advisors, at the end of the day, I think your general advice would be more or less just your best bet is to pick an all-in-one that fits your business best and run with that. Is that fair to say?
All else being equal, yes.
Yes.
But
Well, I
all
mean,
else isn't equal, right? But
except the
pick an
trade-offs.
all-in-one and then add to it. Unless you've got other things, unless you've been no one's got nothing, but no one's doing rebalancing on a yellow legal pad. So
Mhm.
whatever firm you're in, they've got something. Most likely it works fine. The other recommendation I have is every year you want to talk to your vendors. Talk to all your key vendors at least once a year because they've got things to tell you and you're probably missing something. They built new software, they built new features, you don't know about it. The way you're using their software isn't the way you should be using it. There's the best practices you're missing. Most firms, when they think they signed the contract, they're done.
Yes. Many conversations like that in the past where things get onboarded with great fanfare and then it just kind of falls away and the existing vendors end up being neglected. And oftentimes trading out these people straight off old information, thinking that, oh, that software doesn't handle that when that came out 2 years ago. So
Right.
sometimes the best solution is the dancing partner you're currently with.
We make a lot of money as a consulting firm on conversions implementations. It's very expensive to do. It takes a long time and we get paid. However, more than half the time when we're brought in to implement new software, the client didn't really need new software. Hopefully they call us before they make that decision. Sometimes they've already made the decision, then they call us. If they call us beforehand, they go, we don't like X, CRM, portfolio management, billing, compliance, reporting. Most likely it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. They don't need anything else. They just don't like it. Because A, they didn't implement it properly. B, the previous administration implemented it and we don't want anything they did. Or C, no one was really trained in how to use it, or the integrations were never built properly, or the data wasn't set up correctly, and it just isn't working. So oftentimes we can come in and say in 4 to 6 months, no matter what the system is, get it back on its feet, re-optimize it, and get it working the way it was supposed to be working and save them a ton of money.
Yep. And again, yet another trend I've seen before where the software vendor gets blamed for the very poor implementation or the implementation gone wrong when really it was never their fault.
It's usually half and half. It's usually half the vendor's fault and half the client's fault.
Yeah.
If we're there, it's going to work right because we do this all the time. And there's some clients that think they can do it themselves. And they're usually it's the arrogant tech team that thinks, so we can do this. This is easy. Implementing software is easy. And it never is, right? This is what we do for a living. We do many, many per year. And I tell you, there's always bumps in the road. There's always landmines. And we get called more often than not halfway through when it's failing. And it's been 95% complete for 6 months. And no one can get that last 5%, right? Because it's not that easy to implement new software. And you need to think about it. And there's a lot going on. So
So before we wrap up, there's 3 questions I asked everybody to end on a positive note. And the first one is, if you had one wish for something you could change in your company or the industry as a whole, what would it be?
a wish?
I wish.
To change in my company,
Or the industry as a whole.
I wish I was based in Hawaii.
Ugh, good choice. Coordinating times with the East Coast for calls would be difficult. But
Who cares?
yeah.
What's the other
Anything
question?
else? No. Anything else? Is that really it?
Change in the industry?
Eh.
Oh, there's so much to change. I mean, I would like to see firms do a little more thinking before they, looking before they leap. Right. I think that firms would save a lot of time if they thought about their overall tech stack strategy. Now, that would take some business away from us because that's what we do. But I think it would help a lot of firms if they sat down and said, what is our tech strategy? Do we even have one? Most firms don't even think about that. They know our tech is here, we have it, it's working, but no one thinks about where are we going with this?
Mhm.
What kind of firm are we going to be in 5 years or 3 years? And then will our tech stack support that? No one really thinks about that. So I think if they spend a little time, you don't have to make it into a gigantic mission statement, but a little bit of time thinking about, is this the tech stack we want or just the one that we were given? Did we inherit this from the previous administration
Mhm.
and they're all gone now, right? And now we're stuck with this. Or is it
Too often.
something, did we choose it rationally and intelligently and thoughtfully?
Fair enough. Second question. What's been the biggest challenge in your company to where it is today?
Finding great people,
Hmm.
right? And that there's a lot of people out there. I read a good book called Who? I can't remember the authors. The book is called Who? And it's all about hiring and how you need to, and how it's so easy to just hire any old person and that people's hiring processes are usually broken and don't really do a good job. Oh, Jeff Smart and Randy Street.
Okay.
The A method for hiring, right? You want to hire A players. That's the old adage. A players hire A players, B players hire C players, right?
Mhm.
So that's hard to do. And how do you find people? Don't just, don't get blown away by the resume. Don't get, mired in the interview process because people are good at interviews. If they're an executive who's been around more than a short time and had a couple of jobs, they're really good at interviewing, but they may
Yes.
not be that good at executing. And that's what you have to find out. So talking to their previous employers and really finding out what their strengths and weaknesses are way more important than the interview process or what their resume says. Another good thing was the resume is all their successes and none of their failures. And half the successes aren't real.
Everybody's putting on their best face when they're interviewing, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's like when you're dating. You're seeing the best of that person. You're not seeing every episode.
Every episode. Love that. All right. And last question is, what is it that excites you about what it is you're working on and keeps you getting up in the morning to fight the good fight?
Oh, solving problems. That's why I like being a consultant when I started 21 years ago. We don't have to deal with all the BS in a big company. I did a big company for 10 years. And a lot of the time you're spending on BS. Procedure just for procedure's sake. Can I get my 3% raise? And whose ass do I have to kiss up to get things done? Rather than who's the most efficient, effective. And with consulting, it's all about who's efficient and effective and the best at doing something, right? It's not about necessarily how long you've been in the business. Your seniority doesn't really matter if you can't get things done. And your reputation is all that you have, and your referrals are all that you have in the business. And if those aren't good, you're not going to last long. We've been doing this 21 years, and there's no other consulting firm in our space that's been doing it this long. And because we are good at what we do, and we like solving problems, and we only do wealth management. We just do wealth management because we love it. And everyone on our team are operators. They've either worked at COO, CTO at a wealth firm, or they were deploying software from vendors at many firms and really know the industry backwards and forwards. And they love doing what they do as well.
Excellent. Craig, thanks for taking the time. Very much appreciated.
Jason, it's always a pleasure. Is that the holy grail I see back on your shelf?
That is legitimately the holy grail of my right shoulder. Yes.
And next to a lightsaber.
Next to a lightsaber.
Very few people can say they have that.
Sorry?
Very few people can say they have both of those.
Well, I mean, if you go to Disney, you can get them both.
A lightsaber, the holy grail, and a lava lamp on Jason's,
lava lamp. That one they don't have it.
Bookshelf.
A cabinet of curiosities. So that was my interview with Craig Iskowitz of the Ezra Group. If you're in the market for a consultant, please take a look at his website and consider hiring him. As always, if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, or visit your podcast. Until next time, take care.
This podcast was brought to you by Woodgate Financial, an award-winning financial planning firm catering to high net worth individuals and their families. To learn more, go to woodgate.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play, or find more episodes at jasonpereira.ca.